They used to call me the golden pillar of the company. I never liked grand titles like that, but I understood why they said it. After nearly 12 years at Deltronic Solutions, a rising tech firm in Austin, I had built the R&D department from a modest testing lab into the company's crown jewel. My signature work, the Delta Core logistics algorithm, had saved millions annually. I didn't patent it under my name. I believed it belonged to the team, to the company. Loyalty, I thought, would always come back around. I lived in a quiet vintage-style home in Round Rock with my beautiful wife Clara and our two wonderful kids, Mason and Lily. My life wasn't flashy, but it was full, enough to make friends jealous. Clara used to be an artist, then moved into real estate. She was graceful, intelligent, and well-loved. Every night, we'd eat dinner together, read stories to the kids, and sit on the porch sipping wine. If life were a painting, I was in its brightest corner. I still remember when the CEO, Mr. Harrison, called me up on stage during our quarterly staff summit to award me. "If this company is a ship," he said, shaking my hand, "then you, my friend, are the one at the helm." The entire auditorium stood and applauded. I smiled, nodded humbly. I never needed fame, just respect. I believed if you worked hard, stayed decent, and loved your family, life would reward you. But I had forgotten, life doesn't run on perfect algorithms. The first crack didn't come from a major event. It came from a simple question. One evening, after dinner, Clara looked at me and asked, "Do you ever feel like you deserve more?" I thought she meant a vacation or a bigger house. I chuckled and replied, "As long as I have you and the kids, that's all I need." What I didn't know was my answer planted a seed in someone's heart, a seed that grew into a world where I didn't exist. Things don't fall apart all at once. Betrayal is like a tiny crack beneath polished paint, silent, patient, and deadly. It began with small changes, subtle enough that I brushed them off as nothing. Clara stopped asking about my work. She used to be curious, always wanting to know how the algorithm was progressing or how my team was doing. But now, she was always busy. Late night showings, urgent closings, networking dinners. "It's real estate season," she'd say with a tired smile. I believed her. Clara had always supported me. She was there when I coded Delta Core from our rented garage, sleeping on the couch while I pulled all-nighters. That kind of love, I thought, couldn't vanish. At the office, things felt off. I began being left out of meetings I usually led. Documents concerning my project circulated with my name oddly omitted. I asked Darren, a younger manager I had once mentored, if something had changed. He smiled, all charm and confidence, and said, "Just streamlining communication. You know how corporate gets." I nodded. Maybe I was just getting old. But then came the night that changed everything. I woke up thirsty around 2 a.m., walked to the kitchen, and stopped dead in my tracks. Clara was there, sitting in the dark, phone pressed to her ear, whispering, "No, he doesn't suspect anything. Yes, it's all going according to plan." I froze. I didn't step forward. I didn't speak. I stood in the shadow of my own home, the warmth of my life melting into something cold and foreign. In the morning, Clara was cheerful, handing me coffee with a kiss on the cheek. I smiled back, but a new kind of silence had taken root inside me. A week later, I received an email from the company's legal department. It was brief and clinical. You are requested to formally transfer all documentation and source code related to Delta Core to the technical division under the supervision of Darren Maddox. This is part of internal restructuring and IP compliance. I sat staring at the screen. I had created Delta Core line by line. I knew its logic like the rhythm of my own breath. And now, they were asking me to hand it over, like a laborer passing his tools before being let go. Outside, the sun still touched the treetops. The world kept spinning. But inside, something in me had begun to shut down. And something else, quiet, deliberate, was awakening. It wasn't long after that email that the final blow came. I was called into a meeting, scheduled late on a Friday, which already felt ominous. The room was cold, the kind of cold that doesn't come from air conditioning. Sitting across from me were Harrison, the CEO, and Darren, the man I once took under my wing. Harrison smiled with a rehearsed calm. "We've been evaluating the direction of our intellectual property," he began, "and we've decided to consolidate all proprietary frameworks under a new leadership model." I nodded, though I already knew where this was going. "Your position," he continued, "will be dissolved. You'll be offered a consultancy severance package to ensure a smooth transition. Darren will lead the Delta Core division moving forward." Darren didn't look at me. He just fiddled with his pen, a nervous tic I remembered from his first interview. Back then, he had asked me what it took to succeed. I told him, integrity. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply stood, shook both their hands, and walked out. But here's what they didn't know. I had filed a personal provisional patent on Delta Core 6 months earlier. Clara had insisted we refinance the house to free up cash for investments. And while she filled out the paperwork distractedly, I quietly used some of the money to protect the only thing I ever built that was mine. Still, that afternoon, I came home to an empty driveway. Clara's car wasn't there. When I stepped inside, half the closet was gone. So was her art and the kids' toys. On the kitchen counter lay a note, scribbled in a rush. "I'm sorry. This life isn't enough for me anymore. I need more. Darren understands that. We're taking some time away." That was the first time I sat on the floor and felt completely hollow. Not angry, not sad, just emptied out. They didn't just take my job. They took my home, my family, my peace. But as I sat there, staring at the hardwood Clara once chose, I felt something unfamiliar rise up. Not rage, not revenge. Clarity. They thought they'd taken everything. They were wrong. Monday morning came, and I arrived at the office before sunrise. The parking lot was still empty, shadows stretching across the pavement like the tail end of a bad dream. I carried nothing but a cardboard box and the kind of quiet resolve that no one bothers to notice until it's too late. Inside, the hallways were colder than usual. I walked past the Delta Core division, now under Darren's name. The glass wall had been rebranded. My name, the one that once appeared on every whiteboard, strategy deck, and patent draft, was gone. In my office, the lights hummed softly. I moved with precision. Photo of Mason and Lily, into the box. Clara's Code Like a King mug. I hesitated, then added it. A thank you card from the junior team after our first rollout. tucked neatly beneath a notebook. No drama, no speeches. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to disappear with dignity. Darren didn't come by. Harrison didn't either. I suppose they preferred it this way. Quiet, professional, unceremonious. I had spent over a decade building their empire. Now, they couldn't even spare a handshake. As I exited, a few employees gave me that look, the half nod, half pitying glance people give when they don't know what to say. I gave them a calm smile. I didn't need their sympathy. I had a plan. I moved into a small, weathered apartment on the east side of town. No big yard, no gallery wall of family photos. Just a single desk, a pot of coffee, and the sound of my own thoughts. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering where Clara and the kids were. Were they happy? Did they think about me? I never called, not once. If Clara could betray me with a man I once mentored, then the woman I thought I married never truly existed. And yet, I didn't feel rage. I felt stillness, a strange kind of freedom. I pulled out my old notebooks, tattered sketches, algorithm drafts from Delta Core's earliest days. I rebuilt it, quietly, line by line. Not the corporate version they stole, the version I'd always dreamed of but never had the freedom to finish. And then I made a phone call to Lucas Tran, an old friend and a brilliant patent lawyer. He owed me a favor. We met in a quiet diner off the interstate, over bitter coffee and cautious glances. When I handed him the documentation and showed him the original timestamps of my private provisional patent, he leaned back and exhaled. "You've got them," he said. "They don't even know it yet." I didn't smile. But for the first time in weeks, I slept like a man who had just picked up the first brick of something new. By the 6th month, the cracks in Deltronic's empire weren't just rumors. They were bleeding into headlines. Industry blogs reported delays in deliveries, client complaints, and rumors that Delta Core's latest upgrade was causing more problems than it solved. Darren, apparently, had rushed out a bloated version filled with unnecessary patches and outsourced plugins. The core logic was broken because he never really understood it. He hadn't written it. He had inherited it, and you can't fake mastery. Meanwhile, Solace Tech was gaining traction quietly but steadily. I wasn't trying to compete. I didn't need to. The truth had a way of gravitating toward the light. Lucas advised me it was time to go public with the patent. We filed the official documents to finalize my ownership of the Solace framework. Originally conceived from my private work during my Delta Core development days, time-stamped, logged, and independently witnessed. Every safeguard was in place. Within a week, Deltronic's legal department reached out. Their tone was different. "We'd like to discuss a potential licensing agreement regarding certain overlapping technologies." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I sent back one thing: the signed declaration of authorship, attached with a timeline of development that clearly predated their internal version. No emotion, just facts. That same week, 2 of Deltronic's largest clients terminated their contracts and contacted us. Solace Tech was still in its infancy, but the demand was outpacing our resources. We began hiring cautiously. I brought back 2 of my old engineers, people I trusted, people who had been let go during budget cuts. Darren called me. I didn't answer. Then Harrison called. I let it ring. And finally, Clara. I stared at the screen. Her name still made my stomach tighten. I pressed decline. I had no interest in reopening old wounds. Not when I was finally building something that mattered. Let them talk. Let them scramble. Let the empire they stole crumble under its own fraud. I had no revenge to serve, just a future to build. It all came crashing down faster than I expected. One of Deltronic's oldest clients, Weston Freight, a $4 million annual account, jumped ship. Not quietly either. Their press release praised Solistech's authentic innovation and vision rooted in trust. It sent ripples through the industry. The very next day, 3 more clients followed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. Because I knew what came next. Deltronic's board held an emergency session. Darren was removed from his post. Harrison was placed on strategic sabbatical, corporate speak for disgrace. Their stock dipped. Recruiters started calling ex-employees. Then came the knock. It was Clara. I opened the door slowly, expecting a storm. But what I saw was hollow. Her eyes were tired. Her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't come to fight," she said. "I just needed to see how you were doing." She looked around the apartment. No toys, no warmth, just a whiteboard and a laptop. "I made mistakes," she said. I thought I wanted more." I didn't respond. She searched my face for something. Regret, pain, forgiveness. But I had none left to give her. "I lost everything, Jack. Darren's gone. He wasn't who I thought." I nodded slowly. "Neither were you." She stood there in silence for a long while. Finally, she said, "The kids miss you." That hit harder than I expected, but I kept my tone even. They know where to find me. I'll always be here. For them. She blinked fast, nodded, and turned away. I didn't watch her leave. That night, Lucas called. "Jack, they're trying to sell Deltronic. You may get an acquisition offer." "From who?" "Pinnacle. They want the tech and the team behind Solistech." I laughed quietly. Let them come. For the first time in months, I looked out the window and didn't feel haunted. The empire they stole had collapsed. But the life I was rebuilding, it was finally mine. And no one could take it away. A year had passed. Solistech had grown from a whiteboard dream into a fully operational firm with a team of 12, 5 active clients, and more contract requests than we could accept. We had our own office now, modest but warm, with real plants and windows that opened to morning light. I wasn't rich. Not in the way people imagine when they think of tech founders. But I was steady, respected, free. And for a man who had once lost everything, that was more than enough. One morning, as I walked into the office carrying 2 coffees, I noticed a letter on my desk. No envelope, just a folded page with clean handwriting. "Thank you for not fighting me. Thank you for showing me what quiet strength really looks like. I hope you're at peace now. Clara." I sat for a while, letting the words settle. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel grief either. Just stillness. Later that week, Lucas confirmed what I already knew. Deltronic had been acquired at a loss. Its tech assets stripped, its name shelved. Darren, blacklisted. Harrison, quietly retired. But none of that gave me satisfaction. The real victory came on a Thursday afternoon when Mason and Lily ran into my arms outside the school gates. I had finally been granted full visitation, and our time was ours again, free of tension, of explanations, of the shadows of betrayal. We spent the evening building a Lego tower in my apartment, laughing as it leaned and fell. No boardrooms, no algorithms, just hands and imagination. As they drifted off to sleep, I looked around my apartment, no longer a space of exile, but of beginnings. On the wall above the desk, I'd framed a single phrase that had carried me through it all. The man who doesn't shout is often the one who builds. They tried to steal my voice, my work, my family. But in the end, they gave me something more powerful: clarity, character, and the quiet kind of victory that doesn't make headlines. Just peace.